I got an email concerning Prism. It was creating quite a schism. It seems there was some confusion. Over ground or decentered, there was much delusion. So today, my many optical friends, let's hit the whiteboard with a lens, where we will find a little left, a little right, maybe a little change in height. Then we may decenter and achieve that prism amount we wish to conceive. No, it doesn't work every time, much like these gosh darn rhymes. But when it does, you save time and money, and that makes you and your customer's day quite sunny. And when it doesn't, that's okay. Just say, help me, Laramy-K. Now let's see if we can't grasp the concept we desire, what we want to appear in the lens meter Myers. Hello! I would like to welcome you to the Laramy-K Optician Works Training Center, where it is late October, so I got my pumpkin spice colored shirt on for you. A week ago, I got an email and it read, "Hello, have you ever done a video about ground-in prism versus decentered?" And I had to reply, no, I haven't, but I certainly can do one. So, for you here today is in fact a video about how we create prism using just simple single vision lenses instead of going through the time and cost of having them surfaced. All right, we have 11 videos on Prism over on the YouTube channel. I've got 10 on the lens meter. You have all the material on opticianworks.com. You really need to know your apprentice's rule backwards and forwards. Having worked 100 of those drawings where we use our lenses as prism, you really need to know the lens meter. You probably need to know the resultant prism stuff and the powers in oblique meridians formula before ever even thinking about this. So just, let's say, be prepared. This is very, very much a concept or a visualization piece. We are talking about creating wanted, or as it is known, prescribed, desired, written prism using stock single vision lenses. Those lenses that are sitting on the shelf behind you at work or right now. It kind of goes without saying that creating wanted prism using single vision stock lenses versus surfaced, well, anything that had to be surfaced, a progressive, a line bifocal, anything outside the power range of stock single vision, you'd have to be surfacing. So of course you would be surfacing in the prism that was required. Like I say, kind of goes without saying, I think. We must have two things before we attempt this. Now, I say attempt this because you're going to try it. If you think you're in the ballpark of what you need, try it. If it doesn't work, you've lost nothing. You put it in the edger says, no, you're not going to get cut out. You take the block off, take off the leaf pad, clean off your marks, put it back in the packet, and put it on the shelf. You have lost nothing at attempting this. So give it a try. The two things that we must have in order for this to work is enough power. You can't get 4 diopters of prism out of a 1 diopter lens. It doesn't work that way, even if you decenter it a whole lot. The lens power must be greater than the prism power. Let's just say I think you're going to need probably at least 2 times your lens power than compared to your prism power to ever get this to work. Now, the other thing you need is enough lens. And you all know, here's another thing you need to know before doing this, MBS, minimum blank size. Your lens then becomes your minimum blank size plus HCM from Prentice's rule, which is what this whole thing is about, Not always, because sometimes you decenter in, sometimes you decenter out, up, down, but often you need enough lens to go around. You're going to move it over for decentration, and then an additional amount to force the eye into the prismatic area of the lens, because we are doing this by decentration. The higher the lens power, the greater amount of prism you can induce or create with the least amount of movement. Much, much easier to do this in a -5 than it is in a -3. Again, keeping in mind where does stock single vision stop? I mean, generally you're looking at like +3, right? Sometimes you get into high index stuff, which you probably don't stock, right? So yeah, you're going to be limited on being able to do this. There's a little bit more to it than that. If it does work, lucky you, you spent 20 bucks in 20 minutes. Like really about 40 minutes, but this looked good for the whiteboard. Versus spending $120 plus for a surfaced lab job, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days of waiting. And speaking of money, knowing this, the ability to do this, can make the difference between a $600 sale and absolutely nothing. Had a gentleman come in one time. He wanted some really cool proprietary sport sunwear. He had a little bit of prism in both eyes. He had a nice strong -5 sphere for his lens powers. The company said, "We don't do prism." I said, "Well, that's not a problem." I just changed his PD to induce the prism necessary to fill the lens ordered for prescribed prism. And I walked away with a $600 sale and a really happy customer versus nothing. I'm only going to run through 3 little scenarios to help build the idea of how you would do this. Can't touch it all. I am talking about a concept here, and I want you to visualize and draw this stuff out. Yeah, if you really knew what you were doing and you've been working with this for years and you've done it 1,000 times, you can just probably go to the lens meter, move it over 3 in the reticle, dot it, and run it. Sure, that would work. But that's not going to help you when you're brand new and try to do this for the first time. And not every lens meter has the same number of prism reticles. Not all of them have a PCD. Not that anybody seems to know how to work with that anyway. So that's why this is more of a concept visualization exercise, more than a lens meter exercise, actually. All right, really quick before we get into our 3 examples, I just mentioned needing to know the powers in oblique meridians formula. Now, why would you need to know that? If you were given a lens order for -5, -150 at 37 with 2 diopters of base in prism, you would need to know the power at 0,180 to create that base in prism. You can't use the percent rule or a guesstimate or, hey, close enough. You need to know exactly what the power is along the 0,180. So you'd better either have an app in order to plug it in and calculate that for you, or work the powers in oblique meridians formula to find out what is at 0,180 on that particular lens. You can do resultant prism using a single vision uncut lens. Not easy, but you can do it. You would use your, most likely, I think, especially if you were trying for this for the first time, I would plot it on the chart, come up with where that target is going to be using this, then perhaps move over to the lens meter, use the chart, use the lens meter, dot that up when your target is in the right place, and then stick your block on and run that job. Now, this was for the gal who sent me the email, and I think she'll understand. Decentered is decentered. The only time we create prism using a stock single vision lens when we're forcing that lens over so the eye has to look through the area with prism, that's decentered. Surfaced is surfaced. These two really have nothing to do with one another. I'm just going to leave that there. MBS and HCM, and then we'll get to that in just a second and do those examples. I have got a gorgeous single vision spherical lens, uncut, high-powered. If I placed that OC right in the center of my eye wire opening, I need to decenter it for my customer. I'm good. I'll have cutout. I got plenty of lens over here. I need my customer to be looking over here somewhere in the area of the lens that has prism. So I can move it over 1 millimeter, 2 millimeters, 3 millimeters, 4 millimeters. If I move it any more, I'm going to have a gap up here in this corner. I'm not going to get cut out. My edger will throw this job out. That is why I said you have to have enough lens in order to do this. Like I said, it doesn't always work out that way. Okay, let me clear this off and let's do our 3 examples for real this time. As is so often the case here at Optician Works, I'm going to ask you to think about things a little bit differently. This, what we're going over, is the only practical application of Prentice's rule. I've gone over this before with you guys. If you send an order to the lab, high-powered lenses, you ask for a PD of 64, they send it back and it's 60. Wrong is wrong. All the other stuff you see out there on the internet and for ABO prep is you have to know Prentice's formula in order to determine tolerance. Okay, what a load of poop. Don't waste time and money. You are not going to take apart a job, work Prentice's formula to figure out whether or not it might pass ANSI standards. No, wrong is wrong. If you're working this, chances are you're doing this, wasting time and money. If you're working this, which is what we're doing today, you might have a good use of time and money. All right, yeah, maybe it's 1 in 100 jobs if you do a whole lot of Prism where you work. Maybe it's 1 in 1,000 if you only see it occasionally. It might be 1 in 10,000 jobs that you can pull this off. You know, it may be never. Hey, I'll admit it might be as often as you need to do that silly nonsense. All right, but it's a practical way of thinking about it, using it, applying it. Again, I need you guys to think differently. Example number 1. I have a right lens. It is a basic simple -5 sphere, and the lens order calls for that right eye to have 3 diopters of base in Prism. Gonna work Prentice's formula in a different way. Prentice's formula, P is equal to HCM times D. If I have my P, which is 3, I've got my 5, which is my D, I need to solve for HCM. We're going to do a little algebra. Imagine that. HCM becomes 3 divided by 5. Use a calculator. 3 divided by 5 gives you 0.6 centimeters. To convert our centimeters to millimeters, we multiply it times 10. So our 0.6 becomes 6 millimeters. It tells me that I must move my 5 diopter lens over 6 millimeters in order to create 3 diopters of prism. Now the question becomes, what direction do I need to move that lens in the lens meter? Well, if in doubt, what do we do here? We draw it out. Got a pair of glasses. The lens in the lens meter sits in the exact same way as they do in glasses. I've got a right lens, so I'm going to be looking at this lens and this eye wire. I've got minus in and out, so I've got my lens profile that's going to look like this. I need my customer to be looking through base in Prism. So I need to shift a minus lens this way in the lens meter to my left when I'm looking at it. So if I had my lens, I put it into the lens meter. It's a -5. I would be shifting that lens over this way, watching my reticle till my target landed on 3 diopters. Then I would spot it. That's where I would block it That's where I would run with this job. Let me show you what that would look like by doing it by hand, and then we'll get to example number 2. You can actually simply draw this out on the lens, if you will. If I take my lens and I put it in the lens meter, there are my 3 dots. Make those out. I'm going to put a reference line down those. And for our example, we said we had a -5 lens, a request for 3 diopters of prism. We did our calculations, and it said we needed to move over 6 millimeters. The beauty of Prentice's formula, if you will, is that that is exactly what you could do. I can literally measure 5, 6 millimeters. And if I put that red reference point in the lens meter with that red dot right in the center of the lens stop, it would be the perfect 3 diopters. Now, whether I need it on that side or on that side, that's when we get to our drawing and figuring it out that way. Example number 2. I have a left lens this time, and yes, that makes a difference when you're going across the 0-180 or your PD or your ins and outs. Doesn't matter when it's ups and downs. Plus 750 with 4 diopters of base in prism required. P, what is my P? Prism is 4. D, diopter power of the lens is 750. 4 is equal to HCM times 750. Do a little algebra. HCM is equal to 4 divided by 750. That gives you 0.533. I multiply that times 10 to convert from my centimeters to millimeters, so I end up with 5.3 or 5. I must move my 750 lens over 5 millimeters to create 4 diopters of prism. If in doubt, draw it out. It's my set of glasses. This is my right. This is my left. I'm working my left. I've got a plus along the 0-180. Draw that out. I've got base in. I want the person looking here. So I need to shift my lens OC to the left. Yeah, perfect. Okay. I would literally have that lens. I would go to my lens meter and I would need for a left lens with a plus power, I would need to shift that lens over this way till I reached my 4 diopter reticle. I would dot it up, block it, keep it along the perfect 180, 0-180 line using your reference points, and we'd be good to go. We would create those 4 diopters that we needed. Here is what it would look like in the lens meter. 4 diopters, base in the left with a plus 750. And this is why I say draw it out, why I'm saying visualize. And this is why it gets really confusing really quickly. The shift in the target will vary by the lens being a right or left, a plus or a minus, and of course, the amount of prism being requested. I deliberately swiveled the reticle down out of the way a little bit here, so just look at that 4 tick mark and then just follow it back up along the 0-180. Example number 3. I kind of forgot to mention flat transposition, but I certainly did mention the powers in oblique meridians formula. This time we have a left lens. The lens power is a -4, -150, axis 180, with a request for 5 diopters of base up prism. Now, base up, base down prism runs along the 90th meridian, not the 0-180. So in this case, we're just going to do simple flat transposition, which gives us a -550 plus 150 at 90. Now I know what my power is at 90. -550. Now I can run with this. P is equal to HCM times D. 5 is equal to HCM times 5.50. HCM is equal to 5 divided by 5.50. HCM is equal to 0.9 centimeters. HCM is equal to 9 millimeters. A lot of movement. I must move my lens 9 millimeters to create 5 diopters. Let's see what that will look like. Got a pair of glasses, a human, left eye, a minus lens, and this 9D. I'm going to draw my profile that way. I've got base up prism required. So I'd be moving that lens OC down to force the eye looking here. How much? 9 millimeters. Now, I talked about MBS and HCM. Remember, your Bs are generally shallower than your As, so you actually have a little bit more give to go up and down than you do left to right. If I had this lens, I would be pushing that lens down because it's a minus lens to create base up prism. I already mentioned there's a bunch more stuff on this on the OpticianWorks website, including a chart that you can print out that shows you an example of a lens and gives you exactly what direction you need to move to induce prism for plus lenses, minus lenses, up, down, right, and left. Super handy thing to have. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure that every lens with prism or without comes from Laramy-K. If you're watching me on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button. Watching me on Facebook, please give us a like or leave me a comment. I will see you again next week. Concerning prism, it was created.